This is Rory Sutherland. He's the chairman of Ogilvy, and he is the poet of persuasion. He's also championing this new idea called the fat tail, where small moves are creating giant gains for brands.
10% of what you do delivers, in some cases, 130% of the value.
If 10% of your work could produce 130% of your revenue gains, would you still be obsessing over dashboards? We met at Clavio London, where, among other things, he was ripping a fat vape and telling me how in this search for certainty, we are forgetting that it's creativity that powers the future, and how AI and agency are emerging at a time where brands are reduced to nothing more than a chat interface with your customer. Every marketer is chasing certainty, and that hunt for certainty is killing creativity. Let's bring it back to life. I'm Philip Jackson. This is Future Commerce. Stick around, because this conversation might just change how you value marketing.
Brands are built over years. Why do we measure them in quarters?
Right.
Is not me, but someone else said it. Brilliant point. Marketing is fat-tailed. Okay. This is Nassim Taleb who says this, probably the largest expert on fat-tail distributions, by which I mean 10% of what you do delivers, in some cases, 130% of the value. But you don't know what the 10% is in advance. That's a process of constant iterative experimentation. Okay. Now, we have a world in marketing where every time you do something that fails, it's chalked up against you as a cost. However, when you do something that succeeds, at the most, you can lay credit to its effects over a 3-month period. Now, I know of marketing ideas, and I've had maybe one or two myself, okay, which have delivered, I'm not exaggerating this, at a cost of 25,000, maybe 50,000 pounds, value of an incremental, this is in UX typically, 10 million pounds a year of incremental high margin revenue in perpetuity, okay? Well, that's probably worth, I don't know, the value of that is 50 million, 100 million. You get paid 25,000 pounds for it. Okay. But after year one, after which it's been used to justify, none of that future revenue, which amounts to
is tied back to
the marketing activity.
Correct, right.
Okay. So it's a bit like, imagine what publishing would be like if you only were given royalties on the first 5 days of book sales. Okay. Well, first of all, no one would write a serious book.
Right.
All right. Secondly, the only books people would write would be clickbait books. Why JFK was a paedophile. Sure. Right. Which would sell massively, and then everybody would realize it was rubbish and then never buy it again. Okay. Right.
Sure.
Well, yes, he was. Okay. Right. Now, so fundamentally, if you have this massive asymmetry in terms of cost attribution and value attribution, it's a massive distortion on the practice of marketing. Never mind agencies, which suffer from the same thing in microcosm. Okay. I mean, there are ideas that Ogilvy has had, which have made $1 billion for clients. I mean, and they would acknowledge that, by the way. We had an idea that was undoubtedly, it's still going, by the way. The client is still using the idea. Okay. I'm not going to say what it is. Yeah. It has undoubtedly contributed to $1 billion in sales and massive brand valuing changes and so forth. Okay. We did the calculation to work out how much money we made effectively from generating that idea. It's about $200,000. Now, if you have a case where what has happened is finance and to some extent tech and very deterministic uncertainty averse people in consulting, okay, are trying to create a world where every quantum of effort and expenditure is matched to a quantum of revenue. Okay. Business does not work like that. It's a systemic thing, okay, where 10% of what you do covers 180% of the other 90%. Okay. It is not a pointillist world where every unit of expenditure is attributed to by a unit of value. It's not like that. Some moments are priceless. Large swathes of time are useless. Okay. So trying to take attribution down to that incredibly narrow, granular level is basically a false god. Okay. The reason marketing is fat-tailed, by the way, is because marketing exists in the real world and the real world is fat-tailed. Your life is fat-tailed. If you look at the things that really matter, I don't know if you're married, I don't know if you bought a house, okay, I don't know how you got your first job, but all of those things were probably slightly freaky occurrences which could very easily not have happened. Okay. They weren't the product of a long-term plan, a cost-benefit analysis. They weren't the product of any of those kind of mental processes which are beloved of kind of finance people or procurement or anybody else. And often, by the way, you made those decisions on the basis of things that weren't really numerical metrics. Now, I assume you didn't choose your partner on a spreadsheet.
Right, yeah, we didn't sit down and...
No, do the cost benefit.
Sure, yeah.
Funnily enough, Charles Darwin kind of did. He actually did do a, upside downside comparison chart of why he should get married. Okay. But his ultimate decision was totally emotional, of course. That it was merely an attempt. And by the way, going through those motions is healthy, right? But allowing the process to determine the outcome at the exclusion of anything that can't be effectively reduced to a number or a metric, that's a terrible way to make decisions.
And that's where the hypothesis then here in the fat tail is that maybe there's an allegory. It's the best time, to plant a shade tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today, right? So we have to, to be able to best prepare for a future in marketing, we have to be making decisions that pay off beyond the horizon of this quarter's payoff.
Yeah, and yet if we're not allowed to lay claim to any of the revenue line as the product of past marketing activity, okay?
So you're making a call for a change in the way we do attribution.
Well, fundamentally, it's a total change in the way we look at attribution, which is to stop making it within an arbitrary and limited time frame. Now, what we're driven by is the whole process of internal accounting in a business, which is itself completely arbitrary, including the time frame under which why a year? Okay,
right?
It's calendar year. It's completely arbitrary setting.
Yeah.
Or indeed the quarter. Okay. And so the need to pretend that everything is thin-tailed and deterministic, which it isn't, is effectively destroying opportunities to create value, which are fat-tailed and probabilistic.
I couldn't agree more.
And this is, by the way, I said this to Scott Galloway last week. Okay. I said, this concerns me a bit as a marketer for entirely selfish reasons and because I think that marketing can occasionally solve absolutely enormous business problems. Okay. But if the same mentality is now being applied to R&D and experimentation in general within the firm, that's a double tragedy. Now, Peter Drucker said, since the purpose of business is to find a customer profitably and keep them, I would add. Okay. The only two things that add value are marketing and innovation. Everything else is a cost. Okay. Now we almost have a world in which everything else is treated as extraordinarily valuable, whether it's HR or finance or whatever, but marketing and innovation are looked at as a cost.
Correct.
So it's a complete perversion and reversal of the way in which Drucker looked at a business. And most businesses have this mentality because they're very comfortable with internal incremental optimization, okay? Because it's deterministic, predictable, and kind of makes sense in advance, okay? They literally have this mentality that value is created in the factory. Value isn't created in the factory. It's created in the mind of the consumer, okay? It's also created in the laboratory, I would argue. There are two ways, I would say marketing and innovation are the same thing, or they're two sides of the same coin. Okay, there are two ways you can create new value in a marketplace. You can either find out what people want and work out a really clever way to make it, or you can work out what you can make and find a clever way to make people want it. And the value created is indistinguishable regardless of the direction of travel. But by the way, getting the maths wrong, okay, that's what led to the financial crisis of 2008. They thought it was a thin-tailed distribution of probability where you could effectively discount the possibility of highly significant events, okay? And they got that wrong, and it half destroyed the world economy, okay? Now, similarly, we're destroying the innovation economy by demanding a level of attribution that is simply too short-term, too specific, too granular. Great line of this, by the way. Henry Ford, he got some consultants in And they said, you seem to have a pretty well-run shop, Mr. Ford, but we don't quite get one thing. There's a guy down the end of the corridor who seems to sit around all day with his feet on the desk, but you pay him sort of $70,000 a year. And Henry Ford replied, yeah, that's absolutely right. He said, but the thing is, 2 years ago, that man had an idea that saved me $5 million. And at the time, his feet were exactly where they are now. Now, that's an appreciation of uneven value creation, okay? At the moment, what we're trying to do is pretend that a business is like Newtonian physics, okay, with a sense of proportionality and unchanging laws. The laws of psychology, you can rewrite them yourself, okay? Laws of physics, not so easy.